Test, test, test. Test, test.
Is that all the way up on your computer? Okay. Oh, excellent.
It doesn't remember you?
I don't remember it.
Yeah, but normally,
Like I said, I don't remember it.
yeah. Did he ever send you an email on your phone, Mr. Schrinker? Because that's sometimes what I refer to, is this email that he sent me.
What session fix the law?
Thank you, Mr. Martin.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Martin.
We'll see you in a bit.
Mm-mm. Is he coming in or no?
He sent you the.
Well, he did.
What does it say? You have the full up, right?
I mean, I can.
Okay.
I don't know if we have to get into the weeds like that, though.
No, 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 it's just the recent one.
No, it's the names.
Oh, no, no, no.
It's the detail. Hmm? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You may try some medicine.
Oh,
Back here?
Mm-mm.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm not gonna start, so it's,
Okay, she says she's not gonna do it.
watch one?
yeah, no, I'm okay.
And I'm probably
might
gonna.
Make that up in a minute, but.
And we're ready live stream wise whenever you guys are ready to go.
I'm ready.
What's going to be displayed on the screen? Is there a video of us?
It's just a video of us, and then to be heard, we do have to use the microphones. So just make sure that the mics are on in front of you.
We can't see what our people that are live streaming are seeing.
I mean,
Is it just going to show everybody, like the whole room? Are you guys going to be in the shot?
We're in the
looks
shop.
like I am. Looks like Joelle's a little less.
I can
She's
include-
half of her body is out.
Scooch down.
Is that better?
It's delayed, so probably it should be.
Okay, good.
Okay, ready?
And turn your mic on.
I'd like to call the Board of Education meeting to order. It's Monday, August 3rd, 2020. This will be our work session, and we will begin right now. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, Brecksville Broadview Heights work session on Monday, August 3rd, will be live streamed via YouTube for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There will be no opportunity for public engagement. Prior to the work session, the board will meet in executive session for the consideration of the appointment, employment, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official per board policy 0166, item A. Roll call?
Mr. Dosen?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes. Item 2, executive session. May I have a motion to enter into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Dosen?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes. We will now be in executive session, and our meeting will resume at 6:30. Thank you.
Mr. Dosen? Mrs. Kramer? Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman?
Yes.
Mrs. Mack?
Yes.
And just make sure to turn on your microphones again if you're talking, please.
So tell me when you're ready. Are we live?
We're ready.
right
We're
now?
live. Yep.
Okay. Well, welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for attending our work session. It's 6:30. We're going to be talking about and continuing our discussion about our plan for remote learning or in-person learning, restart plan. So I'm going to start it with our first item on our agenda, which is the Cuyahoga County Board of Health recommendations. So I'd like to start, actually, I'll pass it over to you. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I guess I'll just start out by making some comments. I mean, I think the idea here is that we talk about the recommendation from the Board of Health, and as a board, we hopefully at the end land in a place where we either want to follow that recommendation or we want to not follow it and stay with our plan, and then later today or later tonight, we could talk about our plan and whether or not we want to keep the plan as is or make changes to the plan. So let me first start by addressing all of our Brecksville Broadview Heights community and just give you a big thank you for all of the time and effort that you put in to share feedback with the board. It was very much appreciated. I know personally I read every word of every email, and there were a lot of them sent to us, and had conversations with multiple parents. There were some heart-wrenching stories in some of those emails about the impact that our last shutdown had on some of our students, which I think is a stark reminder that while COVID attacks your physical health, the shutdown of in-person schooling takes a significant toll that's very difficult to quantify. Please know that your voices do make a difference. We do appreciate hearing from you. We've never had this level of engagement on the 9 years that I've been on the board. So thank you for that. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that in this process, if everyone could just try to be patient and compassionate, that would be beneficial. And I think Brecksville Broadview Heights has risen to that challenge. There's been a lot of energy, and that's been a good thing. But I think by and large, people have been respectful and understanding that this is really a very difficult situation to try to render a decision. I also want to just let people know that it's really important for myself personally that our process is always transparent and open. And this should include ample time to notify the public on when we're going to have important meetings and provide an opportunity for stakeholder feedback. Given the sheer amount of feedback just in the last 24 hours.
Mr. Dosen, there's a lot on the live stream they're having trouble hearing. Can you either speak up or bring the microphone closer?
Maybe pull your mask.
Go ahead.
I don't know if I should do the, I'll do the mask if everybody's okay with that, so you can hear me better. All right, hopefully this is better. So I do want to just reiterate that it's really important to have an open and transparent process, a process that gives the public opportunity to know when the board's going to meet to talk about certain important topics and an opportunity for feedback. And over the last 24 hours, we've received numerous emails and phone calls, which has really been good. So hopefully our district leadership team recognizes the value in putting out ahead of time what our plans are to meet and give ample opportunity for public engagement. Regarding the Cuyahoga County Board of Health guidance that was recently released, suggesting that districts all start remotely, there's a lot of data points out there to consider, and many of our families emailed us many of those data points, and there were common themes. I'm not going to go through all of the data points. Many people are probably familiar with them. I will highlight a few for myself personally that were of importance. The American Academy of Pediatrics strongly advocates that all policy considerations for the coming school year should start with a goal of having students physically present in school. The Cuyahoga County COVID metrics have shown improvement over the last few weeks. Based on zip code data, Brexo-Broadview Heights is the lightest shade of green, which means that we have the lowest range of cases. Based on parent survey data, there was about 88% of our families wanted to return to some level of face-to-face instruction under levels 1, 2, and 3 of the county heat map. And many, many parents expressed strongly the need for choice. If we follow the county-wide recommendation, not tailored to Brexo-Broadview Heights, we eliminate family choice, plain and simple. I personally do not believe we should elevate the Board of Health as the key voice in our decision-making process. Our current plan offers an online option for the semester. For any family not comfortable with face-to-face instruction, they can choose to go online. For families who want the in-person option, it should be available to them. So I would advocate that we do not follow the Board of Health recommendation, and instead we stay with our well-thought-out plan, which we can discuss in more detail later to see if we want to make adjustments to that plan. So that's where I stand. I'll put my mask back on and let others chime in.
Well, first of all, thank you for that summary. You did a wonderful job, as I would expect you did. I too want to thank the parents for weighing in, and every community member. Your feedback is essential to us. I will also mirror what Mr. Dosen said, that the importance for a public engagement opportunity where you know that a meeting's happening and where a discussion is happening is very important. In the last 24 hours, like Mr. Dosen said, the conversations that we had, the ability for our parents to rally outside is an essential part of our democracy. And I'm very thankful to be part of a process that allows people choice. This discussion and this part of the agenda is about whether or not we choose to follow the guidelines and allow it to drive our educational restart plan. I really believe that the majority of this community wants a choice. They want choice, and it's about choice, and that's what democracy is about choice. That's what public education is about. And based on lots of items that have come out, I would imagine that if I had to make this about anything, whether it be drug testing, whether it be any other thing, allowing people to have choice in a public school is essential. And the choice, in my mind, would be that you had the ability to come to school 5 days. You had the ability not to come to school at all. You had the ability to do hybrid if that's how we go. Our teachers have choices as well. So for me, this decision comes down to that. And I want to allow this community, it's our community. Other schools can make their decisions based on what is best for their community. But for this community, I believe this community would want us to make it so they had a choice of what they could do. Mr. Peterson?
I've read every word of all the emails. I've talked to our parents, some of our parents on the phone. I've wrestled with this since our work session on Thursday, when we found out an hour before of the Cuyahoga County Board of Health recommendation that we go remote countywide and cease extracurricular activities. And like I said, I've wrestled with this for the last 3 days. And I've gone back and forth and back and forth. And I've decided that I'm going to come down on strictly on the idea of safety for our children. And I would follow the recommendation of the Cuyahoga County Board of Health. And I want to thank everybody for all the emails. And every one of them I know was heartfelt, but that's my decision.
Which means to start remotely.
To
Is that
start
correct?
remotely and cease all extracurricular activities.
Mrs. Wigman?
I think the Cuyahoga County Board of Health is an entity that has been established to guide us in our decisions. I don't believe that they are an all-ruling and all-governing body. I do believe that we have not presented parents with an all-day, everyday option. I agree. I am, however, uncertain about what we don't know yet. And rather than honor an all-remote recommendation by the Cuyahoga County Board of Health, I'd like to see us revisit an option to start in a hybrid. I think it'll give us an opportunity to evaluate while mitigating some of the risk that may be out there for our students, while still giving them the opportunity to both meet their teachers and learn in person.
So you want to look at options other than just starting remote, is that correct? Which would be
Yes.
what was recommended?
Yes, so rather than all out or all in, I'd like to talk about starting in a hybrid.
So just to be clear then, you mean go back to our current plan, which we're gonna.
Pre-Thursday,
Right, which we're
Yes.
gonna talk more about whether we wanna keep it the same or
Yes.
make changes to it.
which still what's the word? I'm so sorry. We'd be going against the guidance of the Board of Health.
There, yeah,
Right,
right.
right. We're not
'Cause
going to
this is what this
we're
is.
just not, right, because the issue that we're trying to find a landing spot on right now is, do we follow the County Board of Health's recommendation, which is to start remotely?
Mm-hmm.
And if the answer is no, then we go back to our restart plan, which we'll talk more about. Are we happy with our restart plan, or do we want to make changes to the restart plan?
I think by going backwards and pretending that Thursday we didn't receive that information, I think is a great option given the guidance of the Board of Health. I have a background in science. I tend to believe in science. But I also want to acknowledge that we may not, as a community, be as an intensive a situation as the rest of the community. But I also want to make sure that we are doing our diligence to keep our kids safe and spaced out if we can. So at this juncture, I would recommend going against the advice of the Board of Health. And back to what we started with.
Mrs. Kramer?
I want to, everybody expressed very well what I've done too. I've read every single email that the dozens and dozens that have come in. And I'm a parent of a rising 10th grader, and I'm very concerned about the effect of remote learning on all the kids' social and emotional health. I think this has been really, really hard for them. But I'm also very concerned about the effect that every day, 5 days a week is going to have on our teachers and our staff, and also on combating the epidemic. I mean, I think if we go all in every day, our numbers are just gonna go up, and we're gonna be, back where we were last March. And I'm just very concerned that we provide our teachers with safety. Further, my preference is to follow the recommendations of experts in the field, the scientists and the doctors. So weighing all of these different factors, my preference would be to follow a hybrid type model.
So to be clear, though, so with the Cuyahoga County Board of Health, they recommended going remote. You are saying that you'd like to look at our plan, our restart plan, and choose to do that. Although we do see the guidelines, we're not going to take their recommendation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer, your microphone is off, just so, sorry.
Did anybody hear any of that?
I don't really think much of it.
Hey, you get a redo.
If you can summarize, that would be great.
Summarized a little bit.
Okay, I will just summarize. My microphone was off. Sorry. My preference is to follow a hybrid plan at this point in time for the safety of our community and our teachers. I think weighing a number of different factors, which I won't repeat right now.
All right. So we're gonna move on in our discussion. Is that okay, board members?
Well, yeah, but let's just summarize so
Board.
everybody's clear.
Okay.
The end result of this conversation, is 4 board members have chosen to not follow the Cuyahoga County Board of Health recommendation and instead revert to our plan, which we will have further discussion on about whether we want to change it or not. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Our next one is the subject of return to fall choice plans 2020, 2021. So we need, let me see. We have an all-in, we have A, the all-in model.
You want to put the hybrids up?
I think just, do you want to put just the
Well,
regular plan up?
I think that this was more put on here just to make sure, not sure how that first one was gonna go, so I would probably focus just on the hybrid, if that's where you're gonna talk about? Or do you wanna still talk about all-in and remote?
I think, yeah.
Still wanna talk about them all?
Well,
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, what we're really talking about is our restart, reopen plan.
Okay.
And whether or not we want to
Use
make
this.
changes to it.
Okay, so, last week we presented that restart, reopen plan, and we looked at
Restart plan.
different options.
I think.
Currently, we had decided that we were gonna go back. Was it the hybrid model initially that we decided we were gonna go back on? And I guess, we have to look at, how do we wanna restart? What do we think is the best thing for our community to keep them safe? Do we think it's an all-in plan, a hybrid model, or I think we took the remote off the table as a restart plan, is that correct?
Well, I think to summarize the current version of the plan, which is what's in place right now until the board changes it, we have the restart reopen plan is tied to the statewide county heat map, which is updated regularly, and there are 4 levels in that heat map. And what we said was, the current version of the plan says under level 1 and level 2, yellow and orange, we are 5 days a week, face-to-face in person. In level 3, which is red, we are a hybrid model where last names A to L attend Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday is a cleaning day, and then Thursday, Friday is M to Z attend. So people with last names M to Z. So it's basically students would attend in person 2 days a week, and 3 days would be remote assignments, work, and perhaps Joelle can weigh in a little bit more on what that would look like. And then level 4, which is purple, which would be remote, where everything is remote. So what we need to talk about is, I think level 3 red was the area that had the most conversation on about, are we happy with that hybrid level? There was a small number of people who wanted to even go remote under that. There were a large number of people who wanted to see face-to-face under level 3, and we didn't put a stake in the ground last week because we got the direction from the Board of Health, which we needed to kind of sit on and think about. So we've now decided that we're not following the Cuyahoga County Board of Health recommendation. So we need probably to look at level 3 and whether or not we're comfortable with level 3 in a hybrid, or if we want to do something different. And if anybody has any other conversation about the other levels, we could entertain that too.
Well, and to add, if we were to start school today, we would be in a level 3. Now, we are not obviously starting school today. So what we're talking about is what the restart of school looks like based on what the color codes are. So that's what we're talking about right now. What do we want that to look like? I mean, obviously, nobody has a crystal ball of what that future is, but we need to make sure that we understand what a level 3 is, and, you know, as if it were today.
Well, and yeah, we're not deciding what school's gonna look like when it opens on August 24th. We're deciding what's in this plan. And whatever color code we are
Right.
on August 24th is what we'll implement as part of our plan. So it's really about the plan, less about what are we gonna do on August 24th, because we don't know what the heat map's gonna look like on August 24th. So I guess I'll kind of jump in and start, which is, I want to thank Joelle and our staff for their nimbleness, agility, and creativity in coming up with a hybrid model. I think that's very creative. However, I have a lot of reservations about it, just because what we're talking about is now 3 types of educational plans that we have to prepare for. We have the online model, which is for any family who's uncomfortable with in-person education. They can sign up and commit to the full semester online. So from a safety standpoint, anybody that is really concerned about safety, no parent is being made to do something that they're uncomfortable with or they feel is unsafe. You can always sign up for the online option. We ask that you commit to a full semester of online. But that's one model, so we have to put together educationally, how are we gonna deliver online? Then we've got the in-person, which is what we normally do, but we've got in-person with COVID, so we have to figure out how do we deliver in person. And if we retain the hybrid model, we then now also have to figure out how do we deliver the hybrid model, which is 2 days in person, 3 days remote. It's hard enough, any one of these 3, getting it right and getting it good. Doing all 3 and doing them effectively, I have serious reservations about, especially the hybrid model. We don't really know what that's gonna look like. What is that remote piece gonna be 3 days a week? And the other thing that really concerns me is, because it's tied to the heat map, you could potentially be bouncing between hybrid and in-person every 2 weeks. I mean, if the heat map changes and toggles between orange and red repeatedly throughout the semester, we're going to be bouncing between hybrid and in-person. And I don't, even picking one and sticking with it the whole semester would be a challenge, but to bounce between them, I don't know if you could find rhythm. I don't know if the educational value would be there. So for that reason, my view is that we revisit level 3 and we change it to in-person. Just do in-person for levels 1, 2, and 3, and we basically retire the hybrid model. I'm just not sure the view is going to be worth the climb with the hybrid model. And then that gives our parents choice. And for the parents who really want a choice to be able to put their students in 5 days a week, we can offer that. And parents that feel uncomfortable with that, they can go on to the online model and keep their children at home. That's where
I just don't think that makes any sense, Mark, and the reason I say that is because the majority of our parents selected hybrid for level 3. And I think by taking that, the majority of our parents' wishes away from them just simply doesn't make sense to me.
Well, my only comment on that is that, you know, the survey was done and people don't understand all of what was involved in the hybrid model. The 3 days a week of remote, what is that actually going to look like? I mean, we heard from a lot of parents saying, I need better information to make a choice. We couldn't offer it to them, so they did the best that they could. So, to say the majority of the parents, we had 42.5% of our parents said they liked the current plan, but we had another 32.5% that says that they wanted to see, in person at level 3. And so, we would get better numbers if we went back and did another survey and told them more of what that hybrid model would look like and reminded them that we could be bouncing in and out of hybrid and in person all semester long.
We could also do the hybrid in levels 2 and levels 3. We could change up the plan to do that. And that way we wouldn't be operating too far outside of what the County Board of Health recommended. Because I have to say, to not follow the recommendation of the County Board of Health and switch to a hybrid, or switch to an all-in when we're in red, I think that's a really bad idea. It's dangerous. And I don't want to put teachers in that situation.
Do we know what the legal implications are for disregarding the Board of Health's recommendations?
The
I mean,
rec-
that's probably a really loaded question, but.
That's a really loaded question. Thank you, Brittany.
You're welcome.
No, they are, and they will tell you, these are recommendations. Legally, from a state standpoint, there probably isn't much liability. However, you always run the risk of if, God forbid, a staff member or a student contracts that and you went against it, there could be some personal liability, I would have to imagine.
Some personal liability?
Personal meaning that, as a school district, you had these recommendations that were made to you by your county board of health, and you made the decision not to follow them, and if somebody got sick, I mean, you could be held liable for that. I would imagine somebody could start some type of court case against you for not following that guidance. Because we're living this live and in person, there's just not legislation yet to know how that would
Right.
fall or if you would be able to.
Well,
There is
and-
something in the federal government right now, it has not been passed, that has put out to put immunity to businesses and to schools so that you couldn't be held liable, but in the absence of that right now, everything's a possibility.
Well, and I mean, then we're relying on recommendations by the American Academy of Pediatrics too. So, I mean, we're looking at other things, not just on what the County Board of Health recommended. And I guess when it comes right down to it, I mean, we always have the option of offering waivers to families in our, maybe we need to do that. That's something we need to think about.
So, we've gotten a lot of letters as well about parents and their challenges with, this hybrid model. It's very difficult and it's very assumptive to say that everybody, and I'm not implying at all that education is childcare, but this is very difficult on families who already have very difficult situations they are dealing with, financially. And I just feel like the hybrid model really puts more strain on those families. The thing is if you're gonna stay home and choose our remote learning, I gave you the option and the choice. If you wanna come to school, I'm giving you the option and the choice. And the hybrid kind of doesn't really do that. I really don't feel like, like if I have to work full-time, I have to make a choice, and it might not be, the choice I necessarily want to make. I like the definitiveness of, in person. I think, also we have to recognize, we need to keep our teachers safe. So bringing children in the classroom, whether it be in a hybrid model for 2 days or all week, is going to have some financial implications. We have to we're going to have to do some things to our buildings that are going, to change things. And I know Mrs. Magyar's meeting tomorrow to have a discussion with our union, and if we are going to put our employees and ask them to come back into the classroom, if they feel safe, then we're going to have to do the things that might not be financially easy to make sure that they feel safe, our children are safe. But we are an educational institution, and I really feel like as a public school, we need to do, synchronous learning, and I don't think we can undervalue that. And what that means is, in-person, real-time, and in-person, real-time means in the classroom. And so I would like to see us look at the level 3 being changed to all in, and that way, I'm sticking with the value of choice. I'm honoring the people who need us to be definitive, and I'm also stepping up and saying, as a board member, that I'm willing to do whatever I can to try and make those buildings as safe as possible for our staff and students.
Sorry, just to also add another piece of this. When we talk, if the board were to land on changing level 3 to all in person, we know from survey results and from a lot of our emails, a lot of parents won't feel comfortable with that. So I would assume they would move to the online option. The whole concept behind the hybrid is to only bring half your student body in at a time. We may have 30, 40, 50% of our families who say, I'm not ready to come all in on level 3, so I'm going to sign up for online. We may have we may end up with, in essence, the results of a hybrid model by choosing all in on level 3. If we get a deluge of parents who say, now that I have clarity and I know what you're doing, I'm going to keep my kids at home because I can, and I think that's the right choice for my family. So I would expect that we would have a number of families that would want to sign up for that if we went with the all-in, and they would have the choice then. Do you want to be face-to-face, or do you want to be online and be remote? And if they choose online, you're going to have less students that you have to put in, into the buildings, and you may end up at 50%. We may end up being equal to a hybrid.
It's true.
I don't think it makes any sense to do that again, Mark. With the hybrid model, the one distinct benefit of the hybrid model is that you have a lot better opportunity to socially distance, because only half the kids are going to be in the classrooms at one time. And I believe that our parents are intelligent enough to understand that. And that's why the majority voted for hybrid in level 3.
Can I ask a few questions of you experts up there? Have we looked into any way to get quick, easy COVID testing access for the teachers and the staff? Have we looked into any looking into COVID testing, quick, easy COVID testing, not anything like professional sports is going through, but making it pretty easy for anybody who's, the teachers and the staff to, if they're not feeling well, to get a quick test? Have we looked into that at all?
I forwarded something to Chris Code that I received over the weekend, and we talked about it today at Cabinet. And it is a rapid COVID test that it's I think about 85% effective. I think that's par for the course, but the results are quick, 15 or 20 minutes, I think, or something like that.
And what would that involve cost-wise?
Yeah, there definitely was a cost factor to it. I don't know.
I don't think we have any cost factors.
Oh, okay.
Chris reached out, but I don't think he's heard back yet on a cost.
Okay, so that's something that we're exploring. And then what is our like specific plan? And I'm sorry, I know this was in some of the paperwork, but if somebody does, like, that just happened in Indiana the other day, like if a kid gets to school and gets sick when he's at school, like, what's our plan?
Well, it depends. Our plan right now is to take kids' temperatures as just a temperature check before they get off the bus or before they get out of the cars. And so I think we talked a little bit about that during the town hall of what that would be. So, trying to minimize those kids that would even come into the buildings. But then if we have kids or staff members that get sick during the day, having two different clinic areas where, a child that is presenting with symptoms would go to one clinic and be isolated from kids who are just going and, getting Band-Aids because they fell on the playground or having to get medications or so forth. So we would have that. But in terms of, if we find out, and I want to reiterate, that there's no guarantee that if someone gets diagnosed with COVID, that we are going to know about it. The health departments are under no obligation to report to us. So we are hoping that if our parents, or a staff member become ill, they let us know, and then it would be then us reporting to the health department, here's the situation, this is the exposure, and then they would guide us as to how we would handle that, whether it's a closure, whether it's a quarantine of those kids or those people that have been exposed. So, that is our plan right now, if we know. And with kids who would, or staff members that would get sick, having two different clinic areas so that we would have kids who might be showing symptoms in one area and keep them away from the kids who are just coming down for regular medical routine.
I think since we're starting to talk about testing though too, we are looking at options for staff members to be tested. Just, so people know that we are having those discussions, that they'll be able to come remotely here on site to test the staff. And that would be covered by their healthcare, our healthcare plan.
Okay, and what about, I know we have August 24th on the calendar. Does that give you guys and the rest of the administration and the teachers enough time to plan? Do we need to push that date back?
Yeah, I know we had that as one of the agenda items to talk about the calendar, because I know some board members had shared that they wanted, maybe reconsider of pushing that back after Labor Day. And, I think the more time, there's nothing bad with time. And so the more time we had to, plan and prepare now that, we've got some direction at least of, not following the health department, yeah, that might change a little bit of how we plan. And it might be that we require some additional time to work through with our teachers to know exactly what that's going to look like, for sure.
I have, for the time being, 2 questions. If we go by the way of in-person on red, and that does what Mr. Dosen effectively may hope to achieve in terms of this hybrid reduction in class size, and we have a large number of students choose the online model, what are the financial implications, and do we have a threshold for at what point, if I understood correctly, the plan was to utilize an online learning platform, and if there is in fact a cost associated with utilizing that, at what point are we able to retain, if that's even possible, retain those fees that we would have otherwise outsourced, so not spend that money, and dedicate an internal BBH resource to those students?
Dave, do you want to put up those 2 models that we're looking at? Thank you. Yeah, so this was the initial survey, and again, to Mr. Dosen's point, if, we go back now that the board has landed on a different model, this could look drastically different. But at the time of the survey, and we asked parents, at that particular time, if you were committed to online learning, and so that was the breakdown of numbers. So we had 281 students that wanted just online regardless if we were going back or not, and so that was our breakdown. So based on those numbers, if you look at the grade levels at the high school, you have 18 ninth graders, 17 10th graders, 14 11th graders, and 12. The thought was for those particular kids, you can flip that down a little bit, Dave, thank you, that our online learning plan would look something like this. So we would utilize another, through the ESC, we would use a learning platform through there. So we would give them their math, their science, their social studies, their science, whatever it was that they were signed up for in grades 9 through 12. And then that would be managed or overseen by a BBH teacher. So somebody who may have been out on, who had put in for medical leave, but said, yes, I still can teach remotely, or I'd want to be involved remotely. And they would do the management of that, because it would be a different curriculum through the ESC, but they would manage. They would take attendance, they would check in with the parents, make sure that, looking at progress book and making sure that they were getting their assignments done and so forth.
So, sorry, just for all of the people watching at home, ESC is Educational Service Center.
Yes, sorry.
And that is an organization that provides services to districts that are all part of their consortium or part of their group. So let's say you needed a speech pathologist a half-time. They might have one employed, and districts could leverage that. Or maybe you need an HR person or a treasurer or something. So the ESC is an organization that works with the districts that are part of their consortium in trying to provide services that they need. And so they're offering an online curriculum that is what you're referring to that we would look at leveraging.
Correct. And that is what many of the districts around that are providing online education for their families as a choice, that is what they're doing. It will be managed by our teachers. We realize that in some of those numbers, we have kids who might have special needs. We realize we have kids that might be taking AP classes, in which case we have purchased some live stream equipment, so those kids would then have those classes live streamed to them at a very specific scheduled time, so that they can still participate in those other services that they have afforded to them. And then in looking at grades K to 8, when we go back up and look at those numbers, we have a significantly larger number in each of those grade levels. So the idea was, again, using some live stream and using some asynchronous learning projects, that those kids could be broken up, let's say specifically at the middle school. So we had 30 fifth graders. We would pick maybe 2 fifth grade teams to have those classes live streamed, so those kids would have a very succinct schedule of what that live streaming would look like during the course of the day. And then those teachers on that team would pick up monitoring those extra 15 kids that might be, outside, because their class sizes are going to be reduced because of those 30 kids that want online learning. So, and that we would utilize that for K to 8. We had 3 students that said right now that they wanted for preschool, and we would look at servicing those kids itinerantly. We currently service special needs kids itinerantly that might not be in our school-based program. So looking at those 3 kids, not knowing right now if those kids have special needs or if they are just some of our typical peers that may have signed up, we would service all those kids itinerantly in that way, so that those services would be provided off-site for those 3 kids. So that's a snapshot of what, people have been asking, what does the online learning look like? We're committed to making sure that our online learning program, regardless if you're pre-K to 12, is managed in some way, shape, or form by our own teachers. We feel that that's really important to maintain, as Mrs. Mack had stated before, about building relationships with our staff. It's very important that we keep our kids engaged with our staff, knowing that this right now, hopefully, is a temporary situation, and so it'll be very important for our kids to maintain those connections with our staff members.
How robust is that Edgenuity curriculum compared to our own?
How robust is it compared to our own? Well, nothing's going to top our teachers, Fred.
Well, I knew that, but.
But we understand, so what families need to understand about any type of curriculum that is delivered, K-12 or something that's outside of a school creating their own curriculum, it's not going to be necessarily as engaging as what our curriculum would be here, delivered by our teachers. It's just not. It's going to get you through the standards. It's going to get you through the requirements. It might be a prompt that you go on, you read, you answer some questions, you submit the form. So, some of those are not as engaging. The one that the ESC uses, they can choose to have live teaching by some of their teachers there. We're going to choose and look through that program to determine if we want some engagement with their teachers that would be running it. And I think we do. I think, we owe it to our kids to have face-to-face as much as possible. This was just an easy way, because the curriculum is pretty set at the high school, to deliver English and math and science and social studies. Those classes are pretty much the same. Whereas K to 8, we just adopted our own curriculum, which might not be the curriculum that, some of those other platforms can provide. And so, it's very important to us as kids in those early grades are learning to read and building those skills, that we provide as much as we can, that instruction is coming from our staff and our teachers using our adopted curriculum.
Which I'm just gonna tag on what Fred, I like his use of the word robust, because as long as like this sentence BBH CSD teachers will make instructional contact with learners, as long as that's robust contact. It's like a lot more than what happened in the spring. I think that I want to second Fred's robust comment and make sure that all these bullet points are just really just religiously and robustly followed.
Well, and I guess also, just to clarify, when we did the survey, we were not able to, because parents wanted to know, what does that online program look like? And so the results that we got back were people kind of not really knowing, because we couldn't tell them what it was going to look like. I know a lot of people express concern about, well, if I'm in the online program, I want to be connected with a BBH teacher. And we didn't have that in the survey, right? We didn't say we were going to guarantee that you're going to be connected with a teacher, because we didn't know that at the time. Is that correct?
That is correct, and you know, we couldn't say that at the time because we didn't know what numbers we're dealing with. Now, with the caveat right now, this was our plan based on 281 people who filled out a survey. However, you know, making the decision that the board has made tonight and those numbers change, this may need to change, because now all of a sudden, if we have 400 kids at the high school, it may be that it's all live stream and it's being taught by our teachers. So, you know, again, this plan is flexible based on our situation, based on decisions that we're making, and so we need to keep that in mind, that this is what we had planned for the 281, and it works and it's manageable. It might look a lot different if those numbers jump up to 500 or 600 kids. Now we may need to just dedicate teachers to strictly working with kids who choose that online option. So, you know, again, I know families want to know what that is going to look like. This is what it looks like for 281 and what we're able to do. It may look completely different if we get numbers that have doubled now and tripled, where it's exclusively looking at our teachers to provide that online learning.
So we will need to, I can't ever take, we will need to send out another survey now based on what has just occurred. Is that correct?
Based on your decision that you made, we've got a couple of things that we need to do. So, you know, again, because we asked a question in a survey about transportation, and we had a complete flip. So normally we transport 60% of our kids and 40% that completely flipped. And so what we plan to do is send out a communication probably as early as tomorrow. We already have it in draft form. We had 2 drafts going, depending on how that was going to play out. That's going to ask parents, okay, now, you know, knowing that this is our online plan, this is what we plan to do, you know, will you, and what the board has decided about, you know, kids being in session and not following that guidance, do you plan to send your kids to school in the fall? Yes or no? And if not, are you going to use our online platform? So it's almost going to be asking the same couple of questions and then opting into transportation, because we really need to get then those hardcore numbers to know which kids we are transporting, so we can start altering routes or, you know, making decisions about busing as soon as possible. So there will be information that will go back out to parents, again, hopefully tomorrow, if the latest by Wednesday, to start collecting this information as quickly as possible.
But we can't go back out to parents until we put a stake in the ground about what we're doing at level 3.
Correct.
Right? Because
Right.
people want to know, like, hey, if you're going to be in person, that's going to affect some families to decide, I want to sign up for the online option.
Yes.
And at least we have a better story to tell today than we did when the first survey went out, which is, we know we're going to have our teachers involved in some capacity in the online option, which we couldn't say back then. And we're also saying that if the numbers are significant enough, we may have a lot of our staff involved in delivering the content. And I know we spoke earlier, Joelle, I called you in because I had questions about this hybrid model, and, you know, can you, again, just for our discussion, can you share your thoughts on what challenges would you see if we stayed with the current plan with this hybrid model in there, of having to deliver this online content, which is going to involve some of our teachers, maybe a lot, depending on who chooses it. Then this hybrid model, which is what we talked about, it's like 2 days a week, 3 days, and you got to figure out how to give assignments for 3 days. And then the in-person model, and then recognizing that we could be bouncing back and forth between in-person and the hybrid. What challenges do you see to our teaching staff to be able to nail it on all 3 of these models, you know, and deliver the kind of educational value that our parents are hoping for?
Yeah, I think you just said it very well. It's definitely a challenge. You know, the hybrid model is a challenge because, you know, you're going to have half your class in a teaching situation for 2 days, and then providing either some online assistance the way we kind of envisioned it is if you have kids in class, A through L, Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday, there's no classes, it's cleaning, but the teacher's still there, where they would have some type of office hours, where if kids were struggling for the, Monday, Tuesday, they would have office hours on Wednesday that kids could email their teachers, or they're available to answer questions or to provide some guided practice. And then the teachers would teach them those same lessons to the second half of their classes on Thursday, Friday. Those kids that were on Thursday, Friday, you would have them doing some online projects, or maybe even getting reading materials to set up for that in-person instruction that they're gonna have on Thursday and Friday. But essentially, in the hybrid model, you're almost kind of working in the rear constantly, because those kids on Wednesday and Thursday, that's gonna be their first instruction, to then work on the work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then those kids on Monday, Tuesday would get their first instruction and have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So you're almost, for those Thursday, Friday kids, working in the rear of, you have to preset them to do instruction, as opposed to you're doing the instruction and then the kids are doing the assignments afterwards. And so it becomes a little bit of cumbersome for teachers to kind of manage how that would look and how that learning would look. So it is a challenge. It would be putting a little bit more burden on our teachers to be able to teach and instruct in that cycle. We've got one group that might be a little bit behind and one group that's forward. And some people have said, why haven't you switched to look at, like a Monday, Thursday, or a Tuesday, Friday model with the same alphabet and just splitting it up different. The problem is that when you think about PPE and cleaning, you're having essentially the whole school there in a 48-hour period, and then you're cleaning. So the exposure to teachers, if you have them exposed for 48 hours to the same kids, clean, and then you're exposing them to a second group of students, clean, as opposed to exposed to an entire 150 kids in a 2-period day. So from a safety standpoint, that was the way that we figured it makes more sense to do a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, to minimize the exposures to our staff.
Why not, why couldn't we do, one reason is it wasn't on a survey, but why couldn't we do half in the mornings all week and half in the afternoons all week?
So that's a great question, and it was on the survey back in May when we were talking about a hybrid model. We asked the parents, would you prefer to go the half day, every day, half day? One of the reasons that we can't do that is that we cannot meet the requirements of the BEA contract. In other words, in our contract, our teachers are entitled to a certain amount of planning time. They're entitled to a duty-free lunch. And so in that time, to be able to provide enough instruction, there's not enough hours in the day to provide all of the plan time and the duty-free lunch that our teachers are entitled to by their contract.
Well, then Monday, Thursday, half-day mornings, and Monday, Thursday, half-day afternoons, and Fridays open, or whatever.
Yeah.
Same thing, except half a day's 4 days instead of 5.
I didn't understand what you just said, I'm sorry.
All right. Instead of going to school 2 days, Monday, Tuesday, and then Thursday, Friday, how about half days, Monday, Tuesday? Well, half days for 4 days, and half in the morning and half in the afternoon.
I don't think that's any different than, we still couldn't, half days is not gonna work, because the amount of time needed in the day to run 2 half-day sessions plus provide for plan time and lunch, there's not enough hours in the workday.
He's saying give them Friday, the whole day to do it, to catch up, I think is what he's saying.
But that's no different than doing Wednesday.
Yeah, except it's half days as opposed to whole days. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think we're cutting the instructional time back as well.
That
Yeah.
also sounds, now parents will, Fred, with that suggestion, wouldn't parents then have to figure out how to provide half a day oversight to their children?
Yeah, versus 3-day childcare.
Well, 3 full days, then
Yes.
you're just doing
Yes,
half.
that's true. They
Yeah.
would.
The other big challenge is that, our teachers will have to plan for 2 days of in-person, and then also 3 days of, I'm not gonna see you, so hopefully here's 3 days worth of work that you can do on your own and be productive. And as we talked about, you're never gonna have everybody on the same page because you're staggered. So, your morning, your early week A to L is gonna be not at the same place as your M to Z. And then keep in mind, remember, in our current model, we could be bouncing in and out of this.
Well, but
In
that
a
brings up
worst-case
another-
scenario, every 2 weeks.
That brings up another point. Why do we have to bounce in and out of it every 2 weeks?
That's what our plan says. Our plan is tied to the heat map. So if the heat map of Cuyahoga County goes from red to orange, to red to orange, to red to orange every 2 weeks, we would, per our plan, bounce out of face-to-face hybrid, face-to-face hybrid. So right now, we're tied to the heat map. So when the heat map changes, we have 3 educational models in our plan right now.
I must have missed that. I didn't see where we did this change every 2 weeks.
Well,
It would just
we
depend.
talked about the heat map, we wouldn't change weekly, but we would, I think does the heat map change every 2 weeks?
They said the county would make the announcement. Sorry.
Yes, so the color will change if they meet those 7 indicators for no less than a period of 2 weeks. So you run the risk of it changing every 2 weeks. However, what we're seeing is that counties are going more into red, but like we've been in red and we haven't gotten out of red, even though our numbers are trending, because we haven't been in it long enough for them to trend down, for them to change the color yet. So the minimum would be 2 weeks, but certainly it would probably be a longer period of time.
That's my point. I don't see why we would have to lock in if it changes every 2 weeks, that we change every 2 weeks. Why can't we change every month or something else?
Well, we can, Fred. Right now, our plan ties us to the heat map.
I understand that.
So we would have to change our plan to say we're tied to the heat map, but we're only gonna look every month. We would need to insert into the plan our own timeline of when we want to refresh it. And then, so if you say we're only going to look every month and the heat map changes, we'd be saying, well, okay, we're not going to change our model, we're just going to stick with it for a month and see what it is next month. So we could do that, but we would have to write that customization into our plan.
Right?
I just wanted, Dave and Joelle and Craig, like, when I said I'm in for a hybrid, if you guys think it would be better to change some of what we have in this hybrid, please, I'm open to suggestions. I want to do a hybrid because, well, I already said why. But if you think it would be better for the teachers and the students to tinker with how you've drawn this, please let us know. I mean, I know you came up with this a couple weeks ago and some things have changed.
Yeah, we looked through, Dave did a really nice job of putting together some other options. We can show them.
Can I want to weigh in just on one thing, and then let's go look at that. Just having done the remote and seeing how I'm going to have to do this, because my district is considering this. Our district's very good at rigor. We're really good at keeping kids engaged and keeping them challenged. And the challenge with the hybrid is, I only get 2 days with you. And for me to keep that rigor level up is pretty difficult. And I sometimes get ahead of myself in a lesson. Now I'm changing the lesson that I had planned on Sunday because we got well ahead of it, or I got well behind, or the class didn't get it. So I can't even go in the direction I had actually planned that week. That's what I'm doing as a real, in-time teacher. When I start throwing it out into remote, I have to guess that they're gonna get the lesson. I have to disregard conversations that happen in those two things in their interest, in my classroom, in their interest level. And it just looks a lot different. Can we do a great online platform? Well, if I'm consistent, and that's how it always is, yes, I do believe our online platform is going to have the rigor it needs. However, when you're bouncing me back and forth, it doesn't work out really well at all, just from a teaching standpoint. So I am going to say that for me, based on who this community is and what we expect rigor. And that's the difficulty with the hybrid, is that you're asking me to plan for the future and not take into account what actually happens in my classroom. And it's going to be a lot of work on our educators. And I think it's going to be difficult on a lot of people, depending on what their specialty is in teaching.
I would hope they would say that, whether it is or whether it isn't.
I'm telling you, I lived it, and I can't believe my situation's unique at 12 years of teaching.
Joelle, if you could, if I remember correctly, the Ohio Educators Association came out with the recommendation as well to start remotely, is that right?
Correct.
If we go to a level 3 all-in, do we run the risk of teachers not working, coming to work?
I don't know. That's why we needed to have this conversation with you guys first to get some direction before we could sit down with the teachers. That meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. We have scheduled meetings all afternoon to be able to talk through that. We did a staff survey, just so that you know, to all staff, not just to certified staff, but to all 598 staff members that we have in the district. We had 494 responses to that survey, and over 80% of our staff has said, yes, we're coming back. So there is definitely, there's what OEA came out with as a recommendation, but I think locally, if we look at our local data, we've got a significant number of our staff members who want to come back. They want to do what's right by kids. They miss the kids, just as we all do. And so, I think tomorrow's meeting is going to be a great collaborative effort to sit down to say, okay, how can we do this? What are the needs of the staff to be able to come back and feel safe in coming back? And we're all looking forward to that conversation tomorrow.
If we just continue discussions briefly for the moment regarding the existing plan of the hybrid plan, to Mrs. Mack's point, there are quite a few opinions out there that indicate that the online learning last spring, through maybe no fault of our own, was less robust than we would have all, I think, hoped. Can you describe at this point in time what training and ongoing professional development might look like throughout the year if we move forward with the hybrid?
Yeah, so, well, even if we don't move forward with hybrid, the period of remote or online, it's
COVID
just,
could be, yeah.
How did we deliver instruction, in a remote fashion last year? And I think we've all acknowledged that, we've got definitely room for improvement. It wasn't as robust as we had hoped. I think our teachers did a fantastic job never having to do that before. I shared at the town hall meeting that, some of these other districts that we were being compared to say, this is how this district is doing it, this is how this district is doing it. If you recall, there had always been an option for school districts to submit an online learning plan to the state in lieu of calamity days. In this district, we never did that. We always took the calamity days and then made them up if we went over the state recommendation. And so we never had an online plan together. Some of those other districts had already had that plan, so it was very easy for them to turn onto what that plan would look like. So I say that because I think, while we definitely have room for improvement in how we deliver online instruction, our teachers did the best that they can, getting thrown into a situation on March 13th and boom, having to turn around on the 16th and start doing this. So I just want to say that. Since then, and what we've learned, and you have to reflect and look and learn and be critical of yourselves. And so what we learned is that we needed to provide more professional learning for our staff on what other ways and how do we deliver online education to our kids, because at any point now we know that that's going to be a reality at some point, whether it's in the fall or in November or in January. And so what we did in the spring is we started that online plan. Scott Kinkoff was fantastic and worked with groups of teachers to develop a lesson plan. What is it that we're looking for? What are the activities? What is a 5-minute increment of instruction? It allows some guided practice. Go back to instruction. So we have a format now that many of our teachers have been trained on, and that is the format we will use for providing this online learning moving forward. In addition, that time before school, those 5 days when we originally pushed it, and I know we're going to talk about calendar again, when we push it, was that whole time was professional learning, because we know that we have that mandatory remote learning built into the calendar between November and December. And so it was getting teachers together and working and say, what does that remote learning look like? We want that planned out before the start of school. Or if you have to switch, what does that look like? And so really working on what does asynchronous learning look like? How are we going to provide lessons and get prepped for that time? So there will be ongoing professional learning around remote learning, asynchronous and synchronous learning, and how we can engage teachers together to come up with lessons so we're working smarter, not harder.
Do we happen to know, given that teachers are not required to work outside of their contracted hours, over the summer training tends to be challenging to mandate in any capacity. Are we aware of anecdotal evidence that our teachers have been preparing over the summer?
Absolutely. There are a number of teachers in the district that have sent me emails, have communicated with me. They're constantly looking for, a lot of it's free now, the webinars and so forth. They're constantly staying engaged. A number of teachers I've spoken to are engaged in a lot of deep reading and researching. I've heard things like, Dave, we've learned so much from last spring. It's going to be different. And like Joel said, I think, just teaching the way those instructional practices are, instead of the sort of that 40, 45 minutes, we've got to look at online instruction where it's bursts of skill, introduction, followed by some guided practice, some formative assessment, check for understandings and things like that. But yeah, many of our teachers have stayed very much engaged over the summer, seeking their own professional development on their own dime sometimes, but a lot of it's free as well.
A cool thing that happened was a lot of companies stepped up that we normally wouldn't have access to. For example, Flipgrid was something that, wasn't free, and they made it free. So we saw a lot of, at least, people in our profession trying things that they normally wouldn't try because it would have a cost to it, and districts couldn't afford it, especially, ones that are financially strapped, which is us all, basically. But, through that, I saw also like unbelievable mentoring, and I've heard stories here of mentoring where, people said, I don't know how to do that, and they had to do it. And so, they were having to do it real time in the 2 months that we just had, which, you wished it wouldn't have had to be that way, but it was a good thing, actually. I think some people got out of their comfort zones here. I think we have to recognize that, we put them on a real short runway, and the curve went straight up, and that's, that was a lot for somebody who usually goes into a profession because they like children and like being around them and in front of them. We now flipped the whole job description, and so it's pretty amazing that, at least what I've heard in this district, and I know personally in the district I teach in, like all of us tried wonderfully new things. So and they're still free, so we're gonna continue on using those and integrating those. To go back to where we were in this discussion with hybrid versus in person, the number one thing you kind of learn when you start teaching, no matter what the age is, kids love consistency. They love the routine and the consistency. And that's why I said if you, as a family, go online and make that choice, that will work really well because it'll be consistent. If I go in person, again, consistency. The hybrid does not allow for that same consistency. It's like me making you leave your work day on Tuesday and you're like, okay, you have to get to here, and you may get to here on Wednesday, and you're like, I'm done. And that's what we found a lot of times. It doesn't allow necessarily, but if you're working on an online platform, you plan for that they're gonna get done. Here's the extensions. So I really, when I weigh them, I look at the consistency and the value of that, and, I really would like us to either do all in or at home, just because I know that works really well for kids. It works well for teachers, adults, but it really works well for kids, and they thrive in a consistent, stable environment.
Yeah, I guess the other thing I would say too is that in normal times when we're in person 5 days a week and everything's normal, you're going to have students that miss. They're sick, something happens, and teachers have to provide opportunities for students to catch up. Even though we would be going into this asking parents to commit for the full semester, either in the online option or in the in-person option, let's just say we settle on in-person on level 3, you have to expect there's going to be a higher than usual number of students that would start to not show up in class, right? Maybe they get sick, maybe things change, families decide, hey, our circumstances change, I need to pull them out. So, teachers would be aware of that and be able to put more thought maybe into that if my students are missing, you know, what do they need to keep going so they don't fall far behind? Maybe there's some options to say, let's start live streaming some of the classes to let them, you know, stay in touch. You know, that's the kind of thing, an opportunity I think would be available if the teachers knew you don't have a hybrid model that might drop on you at any point in time and then bounce back between hybrid and in-person. Because the whole hybrid, which in-person we know, that's the normal model. Online, while we personally don't have, as a district, a lot of experience in putting it on, you know, we can come up to speed pretty quick. We have plans. We're going to get our teachers engaged. So we can deliver both of those two models, which have been long-standing in education. Hybrid, has anybody done hybrid? I mean, everybody's kind of come up with this because we're just trying to split the baby and say, let's try to reduce risk. Let's bring half in at a time. But, you know, if you split a baby, it dies. So, you know, the hybrid feels like splitting the baby. But, like, is there any data on a hybrid model and any information that shows that its effectiveness?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
But I can't say there's not. I mean, I
Right.
just haven't done the research on it, but
Right.
I don't know if we've ever been in a situation like that.
Right, and you know what, here's the other thing, is that there are some districts who are gonna be doing it. You know, what's gonna happen when we get into this school year is there are labs across the country with school districts picking different models. And 3 months from now, somebody who will have done hybrid and will be able to look at their data and say, hey, you know what, that worked out good or that didn't work out good. But to start right out and throw in 3 different models of education that we have to try to master and meet our parents' expectation, it just feels like too much, that we'd be better, you know, instead of a jack of all trades, let's master these 2 and not throw the hybrid into the mix and have to try to figure out how to do that, let alone bounce in between hybrid and potential in-person all semester.
Well, Mark, one thing that you're not factoring into your argument is that one of the points to doing a hybrid model is so that we keep our COVID numbers low. And that's a lot less likely to happen if we're going 5 days a week, every day, and everybody's there. So you're assuming that we're gonna pick level 3, all in, every day, no hybrid, and we're gonna be able to stick with that. I think part of my reason for not wanting to do that is because the scientists are saying we're gonna have increased numbers of COVID if we stick with that, if we do that. So part of the reason to not go with that is so that we can actually adhere and keep kids in school longer. So it's great to say, I mean, I agree, it's gonna be hard, but on the other hand, we're more likely to be able to see this pandemic tail off if we do a hybrid model.
I mean, and that's a fair point, but we don't know. The science doesn't say definitively that your numbers are gonna go up.
But it says definitively that when you have a lot of people in a small room together inside and not good ventilation systems, that's a perfect recipe for spreading this illness.
Which is why we
Understand.
want to make our buildings as safe as possible. And the intention would be we wouldn't have a lot of people in a room with a poor ventilation system, which is what I was talking about initially, is that there's a financial cost to the in-person. And there's going to be a financial cost to the hybrid.
Well, right, but so you're saying we're going to revamp our ventilation systems between now and when school starts?
We saw options from Chris Code. We have not, again, that was one option where it was in the classroom. I'd rather not get into the details of that, but I'd like to explore what that possibility is, okay?
The horse has already left the barn. We offered our parents 3 options, and the majority of our parents chose hybrid for condition red. I don't see why we want to take away that majority, and I do believe that our parents are smart enough to figure out why hybrid was on there. It gives a better line of safety for our children.
Well, the only point I would make is that we've had a robust conversation on this, and I suspect our parents dialing in have learned quite a bit about the pros and cons of hybrid now, which they didn't have when they took the survey.
I still think they figured out why hybrid was in there to begin with. We gave them 3 choices, they chose hybrid, as their number one choice for level 3.
I mean, what I would say is that if we're gonna use the survey as the end-all be-all to this decision, that we should resurvey, if we need them to make the decision, because, again, that survey was done weeks ago, and even like, you look at these numbers of how many people have committed to the online. A lot of that is because of lack of information. People answered the survey without us being able to tell them, what is this really gonna look like?
Mark,
So-
the survey ended a week ago today, so it was actually just last week. And I'm sorry, like, our parents are able to read articles about science and scientific data about what's going on with this illness.
No, I understand that, Ellen, but we didn't explain to them what the hybrid model exactly was gonna look like in terms of the remote portion of it, nor did we have details on what was the online curriculum if you signed up for the online portion. They didn't know that you were gonna get a BBH teacher if you signed up for online, because we couldn't know that when we put the survey out.
We heard that in a lot of emails, that I want to see your specific plan. And I
Yes.
think we would benefit. I would tell you, I would rather, and, us in education explain what a hybrid model is, because I don't think it's commonly understood. I'm not saying that our parents aren't educated. It's just me telling you what a hybrid looks like on the ground is different than, you Googling it or even just deciding what it is. I don't know if we did a good job of explaining that.
I think we need to offer our parents our solution or our recommendation how to start our year, whether it's yellow, orange, red, or purple. And I think they've spoken. They want hybrid if it's red.
If we go back to discussing level 3 in person, does the district have a threshold for absenteeism? So in theory, anyone who tests positive for COVID isn't required to tell the school district that they've tested positive, but they may stay home just to be safe. They might not call the district, but they might stay home. Is there a threshold for which the district is identified, and if this needs to come and be determined at a later date, that's fine, but is there a threshold for at which point the district says, we actually have too many teachers taking a sick day for the sniffles, for allergies, what have you, that the presumptive nature of the absences could be due to COVID, and the district decides to go remote for a certain period of time based on the presumptive absentee rates?
So, sorry, what we do have is, and this is current, like for, if we have a flu, if it's 20% of our building is out, we may shut down the building and do a clean disinfectant of any kind. So I think those percentages, if we know about COVID, are gonna be a lot less than that, but again, we may not know, but we would still use that same threshold of illness to make a determination to close down a building and do a thorough cleaning.
I think, are there any more questions on this topic? I'm with Fred. I mean, we should stick a stake in the ground on this. And the thing is that we also now have a discussion and a date tomorrow with our union. And so, when Mrs. Magyar has that conversation, they will have the opportunity to weigh in on that as well. With the understanding that I'm hopeful that doesn't need to be said, that we agree that we are gonna have to step up on financially, and we're gonna have to do some things to make our building safe, if that's the course that we go.
Can I ask where that money's coming from? And I'm honestly asking, it is, we have a $500,000 budget deficit coming at us next year. We have students going to an online platform. We have about 300 students that have committed to the online platform. I'm not sure at this point what the financial implications there are that we're required. Based on whatever determination we have, students could choose to go to another district or place of learning. And to that point, we have less information, but we do have some numbers here that I think we can still work with. I'm very nervous, given sort of a round number that we're aware of from a budgetary standpoint, what additional costs to keeping our building safe. I know we've purchased several gallons of hand sanitizer and thousands of masks. I don't know, like, are there plans for additional PPE solutions in terms of barriers and all that fun stuff that's been discussed that's going to be an additional bill?
Yes. All of that, we've been looking at barriers, we've purchased barriers. I mean, we're already talking close to $400,000 to $500,000 in PPE that we've spent. So any additional to fix, and again, that includes a more robust schedule of changing filters within our current air systems to look at some of the things that Chris Code, I mean, that's another $121,000. I think was the cost to get those specific filters. We did receive some CARES money. There's some federal money that we've received, but I think as we stated before, we've invested that money into making sure that all of our kids have devices and our teachers have appropriate devices to be able to deliver the online and or remote instruction. And so much of the money has gone to that, in addition to all of the PPE that were required. There's signage that are required. There are stickers that will go on the floors that are required. There's hand sanitizing stations. There's thermometers to do all the temperature checks. And so if you layer in all of the PPE that we've already purchased on top of masks and hand sanitizers and additional soap and all of these other devices that we've had to purchase and materials, the barriers, we have customized barriers coming that we've made. It's getting up there in cost. And so where the rest of that money is coming from, Treasurer?
So we've received the $240,000, well, technically, I'm sorry, $220,000 comes directly to Brecksville Broadview Heights. That has been used basically for the technological purchases. And then we've received approximately, that also, I guess I take that back, 60,000 of that will also go towards additional protective PPE. And then we've also received not received yet, but $183,000 in additional money that will be specifically used for PPE. And then there's the legislation bill that may pass the federal money. The federal legislation bill is going to have a substantial amount of money for kids or for schools to return to in-person learning. We don't know what that is yet, though, unfortunately. But it could be substantial. And from what we've seen, there are ramifications if schools do not open, that they may be restricted on that funding. So we just have to wait to see how that plays out, and hopefully that'll be done in the next couple of days, and then we would have a better idea financially if we would be able to use some of that. Because again, from what I've seen, if you would divide that by state and by the number of districts we have, I think it could be a substantial amount of money we could receive. But again, we don't know what the answer is yet.
You know, from a sequencing standpoint, I think this is probably premature to start talking about ventilation changes in the building. What we need to talk about right now or land on is, do we want to change level 3 in our plan or leave it as is? After we put that stake in the ground, Joelle and company will meet with, BEA and our educators and figure out, what does this look like? What do we need to do to get our staff comfortable to come back into the buildings? And if there's additional costs because we need to do certain things, then that becomes a conversation. But we don't need to solve that problem now. What we need to do is put a stake in the ground on, which we already did with the Board of Health, that we're not following the recommendation, and we need to put a stake in the ground on, do we want to change level 3 to in-person or leave it hybrid? I think those are the only two ideas on the table that have gotten traction. So I'll reiterate my position, which is I think that the hybrid option is not right for us because of having to try to figure out how to do 3 educational models and the possibility of having to bounce back and forth. The possibility of having to bounce back and forth between the hybrid model and the all-in model. I'd rather see us focus on the 2 models and do it the best we can. And when we get into schedule, if we want to talk about schedule to give us a little more runway to prepare better, that's great. But my position is that we alter our current restart reopen plan. We change level 3 from hybrid to 5-day in-person, and we retire the hybrid model.
For the reasons I've already stated, I absolutely disagree.
So, say, Like, you would like us to
I have no interest in
level-
changing level 3 to a non-hybrid model, and I'd even be open to putting level 2 at hybrid if you're that concerned about the bouncing around.
So-
I agree with Ellen.
So for the reasons that I said, from an educational standpoint, I mean, from a safety standpoint, whether you're hybrid or in person, you're still gonna have to have the same level of safety. So for me, that doesn't change. I think for our community, for our parents, for our kids, and for our teachers, I think either all in or online is best. And so I'm going to say I'd like to change level 3 to all in person.
Which Brittany makes you Chief Justice. John Roberts, the swing vote.
Pretty sure John Roberts doesn't like that job either.
He's gone against.
Somebody has to
he's
have
gone
it.
against sometimes.
Given that we have already disregarded the recommendation of the Cuyahoga County Board of Health, I am requesting that we keep the plan in place as is.
So you'd like to keep the hybrid at a level 3, which
Correct.
is, okay. Okay?
Yeah.
All right then, parents, you heard that. We're gonna move on to calendar. C, calendar. Do we want to change the calendar? Do we see-
Joelle, do you want to make any comments now that we've given direction on
Yeah.
keeping our plan the
Oh,
same?
gosh.
Like, would more runway be helpful in trying to
Yeah.
plan out 3 educational models?
I think Dave's giving me the evil eye behind his mask.
Stick it out,
Yeah, that's right, you are. No, certainly, I mean, again, we can never plan too much. You know, the concern was definitely when we left in the spring abruptly, you know, we did hear from some parents that were concerned that, you know, the kids had not been in school yet, and so we didn't want to push the date too far. I know many of my colleagues in neighboring districts have pushed the start date for students till after Labor Day, and have been bringing back their teachers early to give enough plan time for planning for whatever models they are doing, either remote or hybrid. And so certainly more time would definitely be beneficial to us, and I think the teachers would definitely appreciate some more time to plan. So, you know, we currently, and so just to recap, when you change a calendar, you have to give 30 days notice, which we did at our last meeting. At that time, we talked about changing it to the 24th. However, you know, you haven't voted on the resolution, but we did give notice 30 days ago that we could change the calendar. So if you're gonna make another change, now would be the time to address that, and then it could be reflected on that resolution that you have to pass on the 26th anyways.
Yeah, I proposed that I proposed last time that we change it to September 8th, and I'd like to restate that same proposal.
What is that right after Labor Day?
That's the week, isn't it the week after Labor Day?
It's
August 8th. I mean, September 8th.
It's the day,
What-
it's
what-
Tuesday.
what
It's
month
the
is
day
this?
after.
The day
it's
after
the day
Labor
after
Day.
Labor Day.
Okay, the day after Labor Day. And I mean, if that's too soon, I would be willing to go one more day, but, I mean, it's,
Yeah, whatever you guys, that's nothing I have strong feelings about.
Joelle, do you guys have a suggestion that you'd like to see? I mean,
I think when we were talking about pushing, at cabinet, we were talking about pushing back the date, that was one of the dates that we floated out there. So I think, you know, from a district standpoint, we would be comfortable with the 8th.
Okay.
okay. Anybody else?
fine with me.
Okay,
Okay.
that'll be reflected in the resolution that you have to pass at the next board meeting.
Okay.
Is there enough time to pass that? Because our board meeting's at the 26th?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah,
so, all right.
So September 8th, start day, you say?
Yes.
Okay.
okay. And that's for students.
But I'm sorry, originally, we set it at the 24th. We're gonna meet on the 26th, so we're gonna be past the start date. Are we still good doing it on the 26th?
Oh, that's good, point.
We'll let you know.
Can we do it tonight?
No, because 30
it's a
days
work
haven't
session.
passed since we did the notification, so you have to wait at least the
okay.
30 days. So I mean, if we need to push the meeting up to the week before, we possibly can do
Yeah,
that.
I mean, if we need to make a change, just let us know.
Okay.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. Okay,
It won't be the last.
so she'll have to adjust when the staff comes in, you'll have to make all those, like.
We'd
is
still
that
bring the
not-
staff in on the same day. That's what's going to allow us that time to plan accordingly.
Oh, wonderful,
So.
okay. Okay, so D, we're gonna move on to online options.
Which I think we kind of went over
Sure,
earlier.
got it.
Okay.
E, technology update.
Yeah, so I think I mentioned this too, but we can just restate it. So Brittany had asked if we could get an update on where we are with technology. So we have purchased all of our certified staff new laptops that have, and I'm not the tech person, as all of you know, but that have a better capability of providing some live streaming services, as well as being able to do some different things on the computer. I don't know, Craig, if you can explain it better than I can, because that's your forte. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a stronger computer.
they're fully capable laptops that'll allow people, our staff to conduct this type of curriculum. We've also upgraded everyone to, well, we will be updating everyone to a professional account on Zoom so that they can live stream to the cloud. And also, I think it stores it to the cloud as well, which they can include that into their Google Classrooms. And then we've purchased, I think we're gonna end up being, what, 80 now?
Yeah.
80 different, I think we're doing 80 right now, I guess, upgraded microphone packs and cameras for some of the teachers who will be looking at the specific online instruction pieces. So they'll have upgraded equipment to use for that purpose, so that it's a better quality.
And we've also purchased devices for our K-1 students too, which are on order, so.
You mentioned Google Classroom. I know there were several, as last spring sort of just went sort of for a free-for-all to make sure that everybody was covered. Has the district decided on one uniform platform for all teachers to utilize in order to help parents sort of keep everything coherent?
So you're referring to an LMS, a learning management system, and we did begin that work in the spring to look at it. At this time, I think we need to have more representation with teachers across the district, pre-K-12, to make sure that we understand if we go with one LMS, that it's the LMS for all pre-K-12, or do we go with, two? We need to get more voices in this discussion right now. We haven't. It's just been myself and a few other colleagues. So at this point, I think there's so much going on. I don't know if it's the time to try to get a new LMS. And I don't know if our previous system, our network, could handle that. I think was a recommendation of Bob. So when that's up and running, everybody has Windows 10. I think we can get that LMS going. And maybe we shoot for next year for an LMS, learning management system, the year after this one, fall of 22.
I enjoy the thought of a cohesive learning system, learning management system. I hope to God we are not remote next year.
Okay, moving on. Extracurriculars.
Yeah, I think we could talk about these two, if you don't mind, F and G together. Just extracurriculars and activities. So part of the Cuyahoga County Board of Health recommendation also asked that we suspend all athletics and all extracurricular activities, at least for the first semester. When that came out on, again, that hour before our board meeting, our work session on Wednesday, immediately after our meeting, I called Mark Mazzolina and said, you need to put a halt to our practices right now based on this guidance, not knowing, where we were going to go, and just to be, cautious. Over the weekend, the Ohio Department of Health came out with some guidance that said you absolutely can keep your practices as long as you're practicing the social distancing, the masks, and all of that. So based on that guidance, and based on some of my colleagues in other districts who used that guidance and talked to legal and said, yeah, you can go ahead and start those, we then started back up with band camp and the practices today. And so they are in session right now until we were having this discussion to determine whether or not you wanted to go along with the Cuyahoga County Board of Health recommendation to suspend them or to allow them under OHSAA, which is the Ohio High School Athletic Association, and the Ohio Department of Health guidelines, to allow those to continue to occur under those guidelines. Those guidelines have identified what low contact and contact sports are, all low contact sports, which includes tennis, golf, tennis, golf. There's a discrepancy there, so I want to make sure that you're clear on that. So right now, the Cuyahoga County Board of Health looks at tennis, golf, and I believe cross-country as low contact, that those can go on with interscholastic meets and happening with other schools. The high contact, such as soccer, field hockey, football, they are saying they want, the Ohio High School Athletic Association says that we can be in phase 1 and phase 2, because we phased those in of how kids could be at practice currently right now. Along with that guidance, what they're saying is there is a testing requirement before you would even be allowed to participate in an interscholastic meet or game or competition with another school. So in other words, before you could go play another school, before we go play North Royalton in soccer or play them in football, all of those students would have to be tested, and they'd have to have a negative test at least 72 hours prior to that. That is not something that we can even remotely come close to doing. Number one, because there isn't the testing capacity right now, and even if we tested, the cost to be able to test every student, I don't know if we're going to be able to do that. There are petitions going around, and we're hearing rumors that might lift that guidance, so at least our kids could play at some point. We also have the Suburban League, which we are part of. There's different leagues throughout the state of Ohio that are making their own rules because, again, this is our Cuyahoga County Board of Health. There's 88 counties and 88 boards of health that are making different decisions. Our athletic league represents 4 counties. There are 2 in Cuyahoga, so us and North Royalton have this recommendation from Cuyahoga. We have 9 schools in Summit County. Summit County has come out with a recommendation that all athletics don't start competition until October 1st, and have made a recommendation as of today to push all practices back, not to start till September 1st. Or the season starts September 1st and be completed by October 1st. So we have all this guidance, and then we have Portage and Medina County who haven't come out with any guidance. So our county, our league is all over the map. So for us to suspend right now, we might, by just the nature of following all these other counties or OHSAA switching, they may make the decision for us. So at this point, I don't see, if we're following all the guidance that was put in place by OHSAA and the Ohio Department of Health telling us that, we can continue, I don't see any harm in why we couldn't continue until we're told otherwise by some other entity that's going to, change that. I just feel bad because when we talk about the social emotional needs of kids, this is one of the things that really addresses that social and emotional need for our students. And while I don't in any way, shape, or form want to put our kids in danger, they have been practicing, they have been out there, and the coaches have been very good at monitoring the kids. We've had a couple situations with our cross-country team where they were running on the towpath, and we had some parents or some people there videotape our kids, unfortunately, and report that they weren't following the guidance. Unfortunately, the layperson doesn't necessarily understand that OHSAA put out guidance that said the kids don't have to wear their masks while they're training. They have to put them on after. And so because people don't know that, they wanted to say that we were not following the guidance when in actuality that is not true. I met with all the fall coaches, specifically myself and personally, and let them ask whatever questions they had. I was very adamant with them to say, if you're not following the guidance, you're not practicing. And they have been very good and very compliant, and our kids have stayed safe, and band camp is running. Our band director put a fantastic plan in place, presented it to the band parents. The band parents were on board with the plan and have allowed their kids to participate according to that plan that I thought was very well put together. And it was presented to me personally, and so felt very comfortable with what we were doing around athletics and our other activities. And again, I would say that right now we are practicing very safely. We are doing everything that we are supposed to do, and for the social and emotional health of our kids, I would hope that we can continue to do that until we're told otherwise.
I completely agree with you. I mean, that the value that those kids are getting, and this is some children's senior year, and this is really, we already saw the heartbreak of that play out in the spring, and I don't want to continue to compound that. I also, I see some of the insanity that's gone on when we lock our turf, our football field, and I see whole soccer teams not our soccer team, but whole soccer kids climbing over the fence. I think if we can just teach them how to do things responsibly, unless we're told otherwise, I'd like to see us continue what we're doing. And if parents don't want their children to play, then they make that choice. But I want to make sure that we're offering that to our students.
I can't speak for anything else, but I can tell you the band parents that I've talked to absolutely love the process that he's put in place. The safety of the kids came first, and he's kept it. So I'm very pleased. I was very pleased to hear that from multiple band parents.
Yeah, and I would just add in, and I know there were, we had gotten various emails, and so just to also clarify, so because of the timing of when all this came out, as Joelle mentioned, the board hasn't weighed in on this until right now. So the temporary pause and then the restart, Joelle handled that based on information because we couldn't meet as a board until today. So today is the official day that we would weigh in. And similar to Kathleen and Fred, and following the pattern that we started when we started this meeting, where we chose as a board not to follow the guidance from the County Board of Health on going remote when the year starts. I think we also would be better served to not follow their guidance here. We've heard from a lot of parents about the benefit, especially given all the other restrictions, of being able to continue our extracurriculars. It's wonderful news to hear such great feedback about how well our coaches and extracurricular leaders are doing in trying to create a safe environment, students complying, parents, getting along with the program too. So I say we continue with the guidance from OHSAA and Ohio Department of Health, and we put the county on the sideline.
One question, what are these different levels of activity in football? Level 1, level 2, whatever, I'm not clear on that.
Yeah. So it was based on the level of contact that they were allowed to have. Like, the first phase was they weren't allowed to use balls necessarily. They can go out and condition and run play, but no passing of the balls. And then we phased into level 2, which you could use balls and start running plays and that kind of thing. And then level 3 going to level 3 was when they could actually start being in pads and then having actual contact. So what they had suggested is that we go back to level 1 and level 2 for right now and have the kids still conditioning, still having the kids, running plays and prepping for what could be in those high contact sports, not the low contact. The low contact sports can, and the only discrepancy we have is, again, but if we're not going to follow the county, I guess it's a moot point, but the county had defined volleyball as a high contact sport where OHSAA had defined it as a low contact sport. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy there in terms of how the county, and when we asked the county, how come your recommendations of high contact versus low contact were different than what OHSAA, they had not looked at the OHSAA guidance.
Okay.
I'm really excited about the opportunity for our athletes to continue participating in their sports. I think so much of exercise outside of the physical aspects do have tremendous mental health components to it. I did have one question related to, and I'm not sure about times of year, but show choir. Do we have any guidance on that specific? And I don't want to call them out because I love what they do, but I also know that that's an indoor activity and they are close and they are singing, and I'm just curious if there's any guidance on that.
So, with all extracurriculars, I know Craig was very concerned about robotics, and so he called me and said, can I still have robotics? And so I said, I'll talk to you after this meeting. And so, certainly we want to provide our kids with as much opportunities, but, within those strict guidances, choir and band had some unique guidance just because of the science behind the virus being able to spread through water, and if you're singing, you're sending out more. And so I think we came up with a really great solution in that, taking the choir program and MIM and some of the other programs out of the choir room and actually using the auditorium as our classroom, because how much can you spread out in that auditorium? So if you have, 25 kids in show choir, you have that many kids in choir. And they do that a lot. So becoming that classroom and being able to spread where they have to wear masks when they're singing. And so, putting some of those stipulations in place, I think we're committed to still providing those opportunities for kids.
This is just a question, and just an idea, because I know the hybrid model is going to be hard for a lot of families with younger kids. Have you heard of anything else any districts have put in place to help with childcare?
So we talked a lot about that, some of my colleagues and I, if we were able to do, especially if we're going all remote, some families have to work, and could we do that? And, not that I'm trying to apply rational thought to any of this, but the rational thought would be if we can bring back kids in our buildings for daycare, then why couldn't we bring them back to teach? And so, I think before, with districts going remote, how can you provide daycare if you are telling people that they can't come back to the buildings? It didn't make sense. I think now that we've landed and have decided in a direction, we could possibly look at expanding our beekeepers program for those families that might find that that might be difficult. But again, we've got to be careful. The whole point of the hybrid is to limit exposure and not have as many kids in the building at a time. If you go and stick daycare in there, you're adding more kids into that environment. So we just need to think through that a little bit, but certainly it's not off the table for discussion.
That was the difficult with the hybrid. All right, so let's move on to our meeting announcements. We have August 26th, 2020. We will be meeting at 6:30. That'll be our next meeting. We may have to meet earlier to vote on the calendar, but we will
I'll let
find
you know,
out.
yes.
Okay. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, roll call?
Mr. Dosen,
Yes.
Mrs. Kramer,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mrs. Wigman,
Yes.
Mrs. Mack.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Okay, done.
Yeah, can you?